Spider-Man Brand New Day marks the fourth installment in Tom Holland's Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man saga. With one of the longest waits we've ever had for a live-action Spider-Man movie, speculation and rumours have run wild. But recently, some of these rumours have begun to feel more substantial. So with this movie just over a year away, let's look at everything we've heard so far and discuss the potential villains, comic influences, plot details and unexpected hero team-ups to work out what is Spider-Man Brand New Day. Hello and welcome to Cinemaze, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this and help me hit 10,000 subscribers this year. As mentioned, the rumours, supposed leaks and speculation over this movie have been insane. One day it's a multiverse movie with Venom, the next it's a grounded story with Daredevil and Kingpin. And basically every Spider-Man villain ever has been rumoured to be in this movie at some point. But lately things have started to narrow and the rumours have started to gain more weight. And I think there's enough here that it's worthwhile of a video where I can begin to piece together what this film could actually be. Now, I have previously talked about this movie when Shang-Chi's director was hired for this film, and I considered whether it was a multiverse spectacle like Sony wanted or a street level story like Marvel wanted, and whether the villains could be some of the names floating around at the time like Null, Kingpin, Black Cat or Venom. And I'd recommend watching that video, but to sum it up, I speculated that based on what we knew, neither studio were likely to get their way. Instead, with this director, I thought Mr. Negative seemed like the most likely villain as a compromise between the studios, a street level threat with ties to No Way Home, which makes things personal for Peter Parker while leaving room for multiverse influences if needed. And so I'm picking things up from that point where we left off, knowing who the director was. And after months of speculation, hearing nothing, we finally got something official in March this year when the big news dropped. This movie is called Spider-Man Brand New Day, confirming the end of the Home naming scheme. A smart move as it wraps up the trilogy, introduces a new director and reflects Peter's different stage in life. And it is the name of a comic book storyline, one that feels particularly relevant to where we're picking up in this film. Prior to Brand New Day in the comics, we got one of the most infamous Spidey stories of all time, One More Day, where Peter trades his marriage to a demon to save Aunt May. This reset Peter back to basics, including the world forgetting his secret identity. And that is where this title makes the most sense. Because does that sound familiar? Because that's where we ended No Way Home. Alone, anonymous, back to square one. So really, this is the perfect title. So I think the real question here is, does this link go further than just the title and the reset? Will this movie have any other direct influences from this comic run? The comic Brand New Day reshaped Peter's life, introducing fresh faces like Carly Cooper, a new love interest, and reintroducing familiar ones that we hadn't seen for a while, most notably Harry Osborn. So I think in the MCU with Peter's life reset, we will mostly be getting a new supporting cast and use this as a way to reset to a more traditional Spidey story, including classic Spidey characters that we haven't seen in the MCU yet, like a Harry Osborn or a Gwen Stacy. So can we learn anything from the villains from this comic run? Well, the most prominent new villain from this era was Mr. Negative, one of the more modern Spidey characters to have actually landed well with audiences and stuck around, which you don't normally get with modern villains. And again, of course, this ties into my previous video made months before this announcement where I thought Mr. Negative would be the main villain, so we're actually starting to get some evidence supporting this. Now, the comic kicks off with Peter not having been Spider-Man for 100 days, and this detail mirrors some of the rumours that we had, where either Peter has quit being Spidey or that he's discarded his Peter identity to go all in as Spider-Man. Either of these I think seem plausible and lines up with the new director, whose history outside of the MCU deals with character-based stories, often about personal struggles. When Brand New Day was confirmed as the title, the director also mentioned another storyline. Now, this could mean nothing. He only mentioned it in an anecdote, but it shows that he is aware of this story, and that is Most Wanted, where Spider-Man is on the run from both the NYPD and different villains. And I'll flag where this could be relevant later. Around the time of the title announcement, we also got the first cast member confirmed outside of Tom Holland with Sadie Sink, and this set the speculation dial up to 11. Many people began guessing that she would play one of Marvel's iconic redheads, either Mary Jane Watson or Jean Grey. Starting with Mary Jane, I don't see them bringing in another actress to portray a different version of MJ. It would just feel weird. Even if you don't like Zendaya's take on the character, it would be so weird to end a trilogy saying these two characters will find each other again just to set him up with a more traditional version of the character later. I think it would just feel odd. I'd much rather Zendaya come back and portray the character more accurately, because she's definitely got the skills to do it. If Sadie Sink was playing MJ, I think it would have to be a multiverse version. Now, originally Brand New Day was coming out between the two Avengers movies, so it's not unreasonable to think that this could connect to the multiverse or even take place on a Battleworld version of New York, as Battleworld is the traditional setting for Secret Wars. So maybe Doom has created this kind of patchwork pocket dimension version of New York, and maybe he's created a new MJ in this world to distract Peter to help keep him in check. Doom film did try different tactics to keep different characters controlled in the 2015 version of Secret Wars, so it's not out of the question, but I think this feels unlikely, especially with this movie now coming out before Doomsday. So could she instead be Jean Grey? She certainly acted suspicious about it in an interview when asked.
No, I can't. No, I have nothing to say about her. Yeah, I know the character, yeah.
It's a good character.
It's a great character.
And honestly, Sink comes off more as a Jean Grey type than an MJ type, and we have seen major players in the MCU set up in other characters' films. However, introducing a new iteration of X-Men characters alongside the reintroduction of the old ones in Doomsday feels a bit off. Surely they want to wrap up the established versions first. And also Jean Grey, not traditionally an X-Men character that you associate with Spider-Man. It just feels like an odd fit. If we're doing redheads, there's Jackpot. Nowadays, Jackpot is MJ, but in Brand New Day, Jackpot was a separate character. Part of this character is the mystery that she could have been MJ and unraveling who she actually was. So I don't see this idea really working in the MCU, but if they wanted to introduce more superheroes around Peter's age who maybe could represent some of the things that comic MJ does while still being a separate character and not replacing Zendaya, Jackpot could work. Also, one of the more prominent rumors at the moment is that she is playing Mayday Parker, Peter's future daughter. Now, most of the things we know about this movie makes me think this is not a multiversal film, but if it is, Mayday Parker could work. It would add an interesting dynamic to the movie, and Tom Holland said that this story is something we have never seen done before, so Mayday could work for that. But if it is influenced by the Brand New Day comics, Carly Cooper makes the most sense as his new love interest. I think they'd want to give Sadie Sink, an up-and-coming actress, a role more interesting than this, but it's definitely possible based on the comics. The most recent rumors are saying that she's actually playing Gwen. I could also see this happening if they're wanting to give a more traditional Spider-Man cast, and it continues the tradition of redheads playing Gwen. Black Cat was rumored for a time to be in this film. If it's grounded, if there's no MJ, if Peter is focusing on Spider-Man, Black Cat could fit into this story perfectly. It would be a more interesting role for a famous actress to take on, but there's not really been any recent rumors of Black Cat for a while. There are two other characters that I think are more likely than these options. One which I like and one that I don't. Starting with the option I don't like, Teresa Parker, Peter's long-lost sister. And lots of you watching probably didn't even know that he had a long-lost sister. It takes away from Peter being alone with little family, and it ties into Peter's parents being spies. Ideas that are not particularly popular. And yeah, I don't like it. It just feels like a cheesy soap opera idea of a long-lost relative who suddenly turns up. But maybe there is something interesting here. For a character who has lost everything and everyone in his life, to finally meet a relative his age who he can confide in, maybe that could actually work. Again, much like Tom Holland suggested, this is something completely new that we've never seen before. And while it's not part of Brand New Day, she was a key player in that Most Wanted storyline that I mentioned earlier. So it doesn't seem out of the question. And the other idea, the option I prefer, Firestar. Now, she's a redhead, she's a mutant, so she ties into the mutant saga like Jean Grey, but unlike Jean Grey, she isn't a high-profile character that would be weird to introduce in a Spidey movie, and she actually has a history with Spider-Man. Firestar was invented for a series called Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, where she worked alongside Spidey and was sometimes a love interest. So there's actual precedent for her to be in this movie, and it's a great callback to that series. I can see a world where now that Peter is in a new stage of life, he has a bunch of new friends at college or in his apartment building, and he's made all these new superhero allies, particularly allies who are more his age. And it's very common in the comics for Peter to have these very close relationships with other heroes his age. There's also been times where he's lived with other superpowered people, and in the original Ultimate Universe, there was a run where he lived with Aunt May with a bunch of other characters, including other mutants who were all his age. But let's do a Thunderbolts and put an asterisk here because this ties into something later, but I think there is potential for this idea to work. Then, moving on from Sadie Sink, as mentioned, this was originally planned to come out between Doomsday and Secret Wars, but we've recently heard that Doomsday has been delayed to after Brand New Day. This really leaves Brand New Day in an interesting spot, because if it is tied to Doomsday, will we also get a delay of the Spider-Man film? Or is this movie just set before and it's not multiversal and so it doesn't matter when it comes out? We really don't know, but unless this movie gets delayed after Doomsday, I'm under the impression that this won't be set after Doomsday and it's likely set before, focused on Peter with maybe only an ending or post-credit scene tying to the multiverse. We also have begun to get some more solid evidence of the villains in this film, and it's really interesting. Recently, Disney had a consumer product presentation just highlighting some of their top projects that are being worked on, and they showed some early artwork for Brand New Day. Day. So of all the rumors that I talk about in this video, this one seems the most true. And the artwork included 3 villains: Scorpion, Tombstone, and Boomerang. Now this doesn't really line up with any rumors that we've heard before, but I like it. Firstly, Scorpion, that's great. He was set up in Homecoming and is now one of the biggest unresolved threads in the MCU. I would love to see him return. Tombstone, also cool. He's one of the pretty classic Spider-Man villains that we haven't seen on the big screen yet, and he's usually involved when there is some kind of gang war going on in New York, which implies that this will be a grounded movie, and I like that. However, doesn't this seem just a little bit familiar? Because the most recent Spider-Man project that came out, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, featured these two as very prominent characters within a New York gang war. That cartoon felt very specific to me. It felt like it was very specifically not covering ideas done in the main MCU, like it was trying to be different and not have so much overlap with the films. It felt like Marvel saying, this is the story we wanted to tell in the MCU, but Sony wouldn't let us, and so we did it here anyway. So it would be super weird to go from one Spider-Man project about Scorpion and Tombstone in a crime war literally straight into another about that exact same thing. And while I can imagine the live-action Tombstone will differ greatly from the high school version we see in the animation, I would have thought that the live-action Scorpion would be very similar to the one in the cartoon, because that one definitely felt inspired by the Homecoming version. Now, it's not that big a deal that these two things would overlap, but it does just seem odd to me that the two most recent Marvel Studios Spidey projects would cover some very similar ideas. And then the other villain mentioned in the Disney showcase was Boomerang. Now, Boomerang has been around since the 60s, and he's always been more of a jokey villain, but his real prominence in Spidey stories was more recent in 2018 when he became one of Peter's roommates. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons. Number one, this is pulling from more modern Spider-Man stories. This, Brand New Day, Most Wanted, these are all modern stories in the grand scheme of Spider-Man's history, and it's definitely one of the more modern influences for the live-action Spider-Man films. Number two, the other roommate in the comics is Randy Robertson, son of Robbie Robertson from the Daily Bugle, and Robbie's past is heavily tied to Tombstone, who is of course the other rumoured villain, maybe forming some kind of connection between these characters. Number three, now remember that asterisk when I said about Firestar working as a young character living in Peter's apartment building, or someone in his life that he meets as he begins to meet more young powered people? Well, Boomerang could work for this as well. He begins to find all these young superpowered people within his personal life and is able to be influenced by them. Boomerang works as a character torn between doing good and bad, and Spidey's influence may be able to stop him from going down a dark path. Number four, this could also be tied into that Most Wanted comic where we saw a series of villains hunting Spider-Man. With 3 different rumored villains that could tie into this, we could have Scorpion with a vendetta against him from Homecoming, Tombstone as a crime lord, and Boomerang as someone who has infiltrated his personal life, all trying to hunt him. Number 5, there's a villain group called the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, where Boomerang is the leader. It features less known villains, but it's kind of like a modern version of the Sinister Six. And with all of these different villains in the story, maybe this is some kind of version of that. And among all of this, we have continued to hear rumors of Marvel casting an Asian actor aged 30 to 50 for a major role in Brand New Day. And they wanted a character who sees the world in black and white, literally Mr. Negative's colors. I mean, that's got to be Mr. Negative, and that's continued to feel like a prominent theme throughout all the years of speculation. So what does this mean? Well, it seems like Mr. Negative will be the main villain because the casting call says he has a prominent role, and it seems like either there will be an all-out gang war with Mr. Negative's demons, the Scorpion's gang, and Tombstone fighting for control in New York, or we'll get Mr. Negative as the main villain and he is hiring these other villains to hunt Spidey. Or there's a chance that some of these villains are just minor appearances and we get a quick montage of Spidey beating up these different villains, but I hope that's not the case. Whatever it is, it seems like this is a more grounded story, focusing on grounded characters, with some of these characters having a personal connection to Peter and potentially adding more young, superpowered characters into his inner circle. And I like this. While obviously Kingpin and Daredevil would have been the ideal movie, I think a grounded movie focused on Peter is super important, and I'd much rather this than a multiverse film. But then there was one final rumor that throws a spanner in the works. The most recent rumor that Bruce Banner or the Hulk will be appearing in Brand New Day. And this just feels really out of left field. The other rumors, you can kind of piece together what type of movie we are getting, but this Banner one, it just feels so random, and my mind goes to loads of different places. Firstly, unless it was Daredevil, I didn't really want another hero in this film. I liked the No Way Home ending positioning Peter on his own. Now, we know that the original Marvel Sony deal was written to ensure that a wider MCU character appeared in his first 2 films, and that deal was extended to his third. However, the new deal made for Brand New Day, not much is known about it, but the inclusion of Banner makes me think that it has the same stipulation again. The next thing that pops in my head is, why Banner? We've never even seen these characters interact. Sure, they were both in New York at the start of Infinity War and the final battle in Endgame, but I don't think they would have had time to talk in either of those situations. The only real time that they would have spoken that we haven't seen would have been at Tony's funeral, but we never saw it, so there's no audience connection to their relationship. So why this character? Well, my comic book brain immediately goes to the fact that in the comics, Hulk remembers Peter is Spidey after the rest of the world forget this. And this isn't a one-off thing. We see Hulk display a similar ability towards the Sentry as well. So I think this feels like the place to go. If some of the rumors are to be believed and that we're dealing with a Peter who is sad and struggling with his identity loss, then finding the one character in the whole world who remembers him could be cathartic and give him another superhero who he can talk to and be honest with without revealing his identity to anyone new. However, I don't think this works or has much of an impact if we have never seen these characters interact. It works in the comics because there's years of history between these two, but we've never seen this before in live action. So what's the point? Where's the emotion or the connection behind the relationship? And in the comics, this works because Hulk remembers, Banner doesn't. But in the MCU, Hulk and Banner are now one. He is Smart Hulk. So again, this dynamic doesn't really work. I think this seems like the most likely way that they'll go with the Hulk, but there are other ways that he could fit into this movie. The movie most likely takes place with Peter at college, so I could see Hulk being Peter's professor. It would give a reason for these characters to meet naturally, with Hulk recognizing Peter in his class and remembering that he is Spider-Man. I also think if Mr. Negative is the villain, this could be our way to bring back the rageful Hulk. Bruce clearly has Hulk under control at this point, but we all want that savage Hulk to return, and a logical way for it to happen would be Mr. Negative to use his mind manipulation abilities to mess with the Hulk and make him go wild again. This could even be our way of getting Grey Hulk, as we see Mr. Negative's powers often resulting in a color swap. And then this gives Peter a massive obstacle to deal with, calming down the Hulk, and that's something we've also seen Peter be able to do in the comics. Also, it's worth noting Mark Ruffalo, much like Tom Holland, are not on the confirmed cast so far for Doomsday. You'd think Banner would be a key player in the new Avengers team, but he hasn't been confirmed yet. So maybe it's because he's busy here, and I do find that really interesting that both of them may not be in Doomsday. What does that mean for Doomsday?
I interrupt this video with breaking news. I had this video ready to go and even scheduled to upload on YouTube, and then I woke up and saw this news that the Punisher is now confirmed to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. I just had to add it into the video, so apologies for the audio. Personally, this makes way more sense to me than Hulk being in this movie if they want to add a wider Marvel character. The Punisher debuted in a Spider-Man comic, and while we haven't seen Peter Parker interact with Frank Castle in the MCU, we do know Tom Holland and John Bernthal have a good relationship, both auditioning for their roles at the same time. This definitely implies a street-level grounded movie and maybe implies some level of connection to Daredevil Born Again. It also adds to the weight of the Most Wanted storyline where Peter is on the run from both the NYPD and villains. Adding to that hunt could be the Punisher, coming in as an anti-hero. That's how he worked in his first ever comic, and then I'm sure by the end of the film they will inevitably team up. Of course, it also adds to the chance of a Kingpin or Daredevil crossover, whether that's in this movie or in the future. If you're bringing in the Punisher from that world, it makes sense to eventually cross over with the others. Definitely implies grounded, definitely implies street level. I like it, and I think it makes way more sense than the Hulk. They could both still be in this movie, but remember that the Hulk is just a rumor. This one is confirmed. Now back to the original video.
So overall, what do I think this film is? Well, it continues to seem like Mr. Negative will be the main villain, and it will probably involve some kind of crime war between different gangs like Tombstone and Scorpion. While feeling potentially similar to the animated series that we just got, I do like the sound of this. I'm glad Scorpion is returning, and it sounds grounded and self-contained. I think Boomerang will be a roommate in Peter's new apartment. I think that's the most interesting way to use this character. I think they're introducing a new cast within Peter's inner circle. Sadie Sink's role is super hard to place. She could be a new love interest, or she could be a new superhero or villain. I just really hope she isn't Teresa Parker. I don't want a secret long-lost sister twist. I think Bruce will be involved in Peter's college life, and Peter will learn that he knows his identity before Mr. Negative messes with his head and causes a new Hulk rampage. Look, if we aren't getting Kingpin and Daredevil that we all wanted, I think this sounds pretty good. Obviously, it's all rumors and speculation at this point, but I think things are beginning to piece together and form a story that makes sense for where Peter is at in life. There are still so many questions, like how does this tie into Doomsday? But I think it's likely a standalone movie set before, but hopefully we get more answers soon, because this thing really needs to start filming ASAP if they want to hit that release date of next summer. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Do you like the sound of these rumours? Does this sound interesting to you? Or do you want it to be something else, like more multiverse stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give the video a like. It helps my channel out so much. And if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. As mentioned, I'm aiming to hit 10,000 subscribers this year. So please subscribe to help me get there and to see more videos like this on Marvel, DC, or anything else amazing going on in cinema. But for now, thanks for watching. Cinemaze.